take care of you. Take care of you.
Right, everyone. Hello, hello. Let me know if you can hear me in the chat. I'm so excited about today's topic, actually, and I see a lot of excitement happening inside the chat as well. It seems like this is a topic that all of us are thinking about. And it's funny, like in the community here, at CoX3, we always somehow convalesce on similar topics, similar problems at just around the same moment. And being that, as a May, like it makes it so that it's very easy for us to discuss, especially in our weekly calls or even daily calls about these problems, and then come together once a week to solve them. And I think that's just a really amazing and fun way to get together and explore the limits of human consciousness, explore the limits of what we know and what we can know. So I'm so excited to start today's live stream and talk about our topic, which is how do you map out your brain on, a digital platform, be it right now Notion, right? And I think the best way to explain this concept is actually by talking about, a story from my past. And I'm sure one that many of you guys can resonate with as well. So when I was younger, when I was, maybe 6, 7, 8, 9, I pretty much probably until I was, a teen or even later than that, my mom used to tell me to clean up my room, hey, Conrad, your room is a mess, how can you even live here? There are, socks on the ground, there's things on your bed, your drawers aren't organized. How do you get anything done? And obviously my answer was, no, I know where everything is, my memory is great. I know exactly that's that pile. This pile of stuff is, everything to do with schoolwork. This pile of stuff is everything to do with, gaming. This pile of stuff is everything to do with, whatever else I needed to do. I thought I knew everything. I thought I knew exactly where things were, and therefore, why would I need to bother with having to figure out, different places to put things? And obviously, now that we're grown adults, we actually kind of understand that that's not any effective way to keep our life organized, keep our room organized in this case. And now we clearly know that, now at least I clearly know that that was definitely an excuse, and I needed to keep myself organized, keep things clean, and find places for the things in my life, my physical life, to live. So why are we not the same way when we think about our brains? A lot of times we think, oh, we'll remember it later, when we have something to think about or something to do. Oh, I don't need to write it down, I'll remember it, and then chances are 4 or 5 hours later, when you actually need to do the thing that you needed to remember, for example, I need to pick up eggs, I need to pick up milk, or so and so is waiting for me to tell them something important, whether it be a boss, a colleague, or even a friend. And we expect ourselves to remember. We expect ourselves to remember this information and then somehow be able to process it and then regurgitate it at some later point in time. So obviously that's not meaningful, right? And if we use the same analogy from our room having to be clean and having to be organized, then basically our brains also need to have similar rooms where we can categorize our life into different buckets. We can categorize things that we need to think about, schema. We need a schema basically, right? And schema might be a new word for a lot of you guys, so let me try to define it. A schema is any type of, I like to think of it as like a system, right? Whenever you have a system that helps you categorize and organize ways of doing, so workflows or ways of thinking, so mental models are good examples of schemas, and helping you essentially process it more efficiently because there is a structure in place. So today, what we're going to be talking about is all about schemas. How do you build your own schema so that your brain has its own navigation system to be able to go from A to B to C to D, all the places you need to go in terms of basically mapping out your neural network and how you think and how you want to think and how you want to remember things. And at the end of the day, we'll have an awesome way for you to build out your own custom customized system depending on what you are missing in your life, what you need to improve in your life, and especially what you want your second brain to look like. So keep on chatting in the chat if you are excited about this topic, if you have also experienced problems relating to what I've just shared, if that story made sense to you at all. Love to hear it from you guys, and let's have a conversation, let's engage, because what's important is that what we're building here is not just meaningful for me in this moment of time, but also meaningful for you in this moment and the next. So let's get straight into it. I'm gonna switch over my screen over to this, and you can see, as usual, we're gonna start with the why, what, and hows. And by the way, guys, you might have noticed we have kind of a new streaming setup. I am very happy and proud of it. We finally have moved in and settled into our new house properly. So really excited about, the ambience we can create here and the live stream, the experience that we could provide. So why do we want to map out our brain in Notion? So similar to our physical spaces, we cannot expect to just have information or just have things piled up everywhere and be able to not only remember where they are, but also, efficiently manage and work on the things that need to be done. Right? So similar to our physical spaces, just because we think we know where things are doesn't mean that we can easily go there within like 5 seconds and then make something meaningful of it. We can't just go there and be like, okay, my pile of schoolwork is there, therefore if I need to find something about calculus and integrals, I can immediately find it. No way, you won't be able to, right? Even if you have a general gist, an idea of where that thing is, that doesn't work in the physical world, and it definitely doesn't work in the mental world as well. As I'm sure you all know, it's not so easy to go and recollect and then immediately take it to action if you need time to recollect it in the first place. So that's the why. So the what needs to be built, right? Well, for me at least, we need to have a mind map or schema that helps us determine where we store information in our brains. If we have a new piece of information, how does it categorize amongst all of the other things we are trying to deal with and remember in our lives? Right? So that's also very important. That's how we have to ensure that we're categorizing our information properly. If we don't know where things are going to fall or where things are lying, how can we eventually go and pick it up where it needs to, from where it is to where it needs to be, right? So it's much more effective to, once we have the idea, to instantly be able to place it into the right bucket, in the right place where we need to start processing it. So let's then talk about the how, right? And the how is very important here too, because the how is exactly how we're going to build this out. What attributes or what properties does this, let's call it schema, let's call it, let's just call it a page for now rather, right? This page that we're going to start building out inside Notion, how is it going to specifically help us tackle the why and the what? And I think that, it's also, I like what Krissa is saying in the chat, because it also determines, in terms of how you categorize things, it's very personal to you. You might have a different way of visualizing how different pieces of information actually categorize in your life, how they necessarily, how you remember them more effectively. First of all, most important, how you remember, and then how you like to process, because processing is different for every individual. So when you're following along, make sure you recognize that this is the way that I think about things, and kind of think about how you would manipulate it to think about your specific life and your specific workflows and your specific way that you live. So the how. So what we're going to build is a database that maps out your own perfect system. What databases what types of data you want to store, what properties matter for you, so that you know what structured data to store, and also how the data relates to one another. So we're talking about relations, similar to how your own brain builds connections, right? So you can see here that we already have basically the what types of data you want to store, what structured data you want to keep, and we'll talk about structured data in just a quick sec if you don't understand what the difference between structured data and non-structured data. Excuse me. And then how the data relates to one another is also very important, because relations are basically the fundamental building blocks of how our brain builds connections, right? So by the way, if you guys have any questions, let me know. Ask in the chat. I'm here to answer questions. I'm here to help. So don't hesitate to ask, okay? I'm always here to ask. Always here to answer questions. So I'm just going to jump into our super package for a second, because I want to create a new page. This will definitely be included in your super package, to make sure that if you ever need to refer to something, at least the way that I think about things, it's always there for you. But of course, I do recommend that you also build your own together with us right now on stream, so that'll be very fun. Let's do it together. So let's call this system schema, okay? And system schema, let's make this a nice little icon. Maybe a system to us includes gears, right? There's a little gear emoji. And then first, let's talk about some of the knowledge behind this. I mentioned 3 main things that we need to do, right? So, well, first of all, let's actually add a quote here. So we usually start off explaining what this page is all about. So help your brain or map out categorize all the things your brain is thinking about and processing into their own respective buckets, and learn how they connect with one another. Okay, so that's the idea behind this page. And what we're going to talk about is the things that need to be stored. What needs to be stored? What needs to be captured, right? And let's do that. So the first thing that needs to be captured is types of information to type of information. And then the second thing we need to talk about is going to be, let's double check this. And then categorization, categorization of information. That was a typo. And the properties, structured data to store. And then finally, how the data connects to other pieces of data. Okay, so type of information is actually categorization. So let's talk about that like this: categorization. Oh my god, categorization. Perfect. Okay, so let's talk about each one of these, because I think each one is actually quite meaningful, and I want to explain what they are. So, type of information categorization. So, for example, we would want to think about, well, if I am trying to store, let's say, recipes, right? Then they would go into a meal planner bucket, right? If I am trying to store ideas, then they would go into a content into a, oh, that's all about ideas. That's all about reflections. Then they would go into our daily journal, right? So we're helping categorize it by databases. So if I have certain information, which database should it live in? Then once I know where the data is going to live, then I'm going to say, well, what kind of specificity, oh my gosh, I cannot spell today, guys. What kind of detail do we want to go into to have easily searchable information? So a good example for this, let me explain what structured data is, right? Structured data means you're storing it inside the property. Means that you have a specific property that's going to capture the information so that you can reveal it in a view, or you can easily search it based on a specific property that you're looking at, and you can filter, categorize, etc. Versus putting it into the page where you won't be able to search it. Like the best analogy I have, actually, let me talk about analogy, right? And let's use paper and pencil to explain this analogy. So let's say you have a huge notebook, and you know this notebook is all about science, right? It includes everything you learn from grade 9 to grade 12. Okay, cool. Let's say you wanted to browse specifically everything to do with, let's say, bacteria, okay? How would you find it? Right? So the idea is that in the physical world, you would use tabs, right? You would use a glossary, an index, some kind of way to find all this information. But if it's your own notebook, you may not have done that. So if the properties is akin to making an index, or at least intentionally making a glossary of what information is important that you might want to look up again in the future, right? So having properties in Notion in a database basically is like having a glossary that you have built beforehand to determine the most important pieces of information that are likely need to be searchable, filterable, and sortable to help you process the information in the future. So hopefully that made sense to you guys, and let me know again if that didn't make sense. But that is an analogy that is very useful to start thinking about databases in general. Like, this is database knowledge. This is exactly how you need to think about when you think about structured and unstructured data. Unstructured data would be if you had no if you have unstructured data, it is information just inside the page. It is very difficult to search and find the information you need. Okay, so that's very important. So this is properties. And then the last thing we need to talk about is how does the data connect to other piece of data? So this would be for relations. And to talk about here is, once the data is stored inside our database, what can we do with this new piece of information in our lives, right? So that's also a really important question to ask, to make sure that, hey, now that I have this information, how can I replicate almost what our brain can do in the real world, and then make sure that it also does the same in the digital world, or makes it easier to do in the digital world as well. So let's talk about this and let's start building. And again, for people who are just joining in now, we're going to be using our super package, our own systems for a better life, as a way to start this off. But of course, feel free to build out your own system schema based on the terminology that you agree with, right? Everyone has different terminology, and based on the things that you want to capture. You might not want to capture everything that we have here, which is actually going to be quite a lot, so I'm excited. Okay, so let's make a table here, actually, or at least let's make a table first, and then we might change it to a gallery later. So let's make it a table, and we're going to call this table, let's say, schema. Okay, and we're going to call this the master database, or let's call it database. And then let's talk about what types of information. So information that will be stored in it. Or actually, what might be good is let's actually have this as a database. So we have table, but these are databases, right? So then we can have a relation here already to help you do that. So we can say types of information. And then we call this information to be stored. And then we can say, where can we store it? So we link this to databases. This is where we can store it. So we can see the information here to here. Perfect. And then so I'm just gonna trim this down a little bit. And this is type information to store. And then I'm wondering if we should add properties in here or properties in the other page. I think we should add properties inside this page. Okay, so let's now open up our system, and maybe we can use like our mind map. And this mind map is getting a bit complicated just because we have so much stuff, but ideally we can start using this as a basis. So we already have 3 master databases, right? Areas of competence, knowledge hub, success plan. Let's start there. So we have areas of competence, right? Knowledge hub, success plan, right? So for example, if I want to store a goal, right, I have in life, or I want to store a key result, or I want to store a project, or I want to store a task, this information all goes into our success plan, right? And you guys may know this if you're following along. But all this information is stored in your success plan. And let's say we have fears. Let's say we have fears that we want to keep track of, that we want to make sure that, hey, actually, our desire for success is driven by our fear of failing or fear of whatever. Therefore, I need to keep track of these fears. Where do fears live, right? So cool. So fears actually then, we have a fear tracker, right? A fear tracker database. And this one will be tracking fears. And the interesting thing about this one then, right, is that we then also have relations. So how does the fear tracker relate to other databases? Well, we have a relation. Let's make it self-referential, so databases. So we're going to create a new property, yeah. So let's talk about that. Actually, should do one way. Let's do two, because it's not parent and child. They're both on the same level. I think that's the interesting thing. They're not parents and child. They're sisters, and I'll explain what that means. But like, I think that, yeah, let's use the same property for now. Let's just see how it is. Okay, related databases, or related, yeah. So fear tracker and success plan relates to each other. Okay, does that pop up for both? Okay, maybe I can just do it like that. Okay, cool. So these relate to one another, right? So fear tracker relates to success plan relates to fear tracker. Perfect. So so that's an example, right? So we have fears that we want to keep track. Great. How about areas that we want to improve, right? How about values? And of course, here's where we can explain each thing too, right? So let's add a description, right? The big dreams we have in life, the quantifiable success metrics of each goal we have, the experiments we do to get closer to our goals, the tasks that the executable tasks we work on every day. Right, so that's how we can essentially have some descriptions about the each type of information that's going to be stored, and information is misspelled, sorry about that. And then we talk about and then we can keep going on, right? So areas then are stored in our areas of competence. We have values that are also stored in our areas of competence. So you can start seeing like this is how we kind of store the information. And if we want to, we can even open it up and say, well, how exactly do we store this information? So for example, if I go to the super package, right, and I find our areas of competence, let me just show you quickly, because values is a new thing, right? So not many people know exactly how values work. So let's talk about that for just a quick sec. So for example, we have values here, right? So if we want to add a value, then type needs to equal the value, right? So that's the main thing. And we have a summary, and this actually can auto generate if you just click on the template, but we can do that, right? So we can say, and actually we can even have one more column that says if we have a template or not. So we can do a checkbox template, right? So we can have template, and we can put it here, and we can say, yes, if I want to add a new area or a new value, there is a template. If I want to add a new goal, key result, project, or task, there is a template. A new fear, I don't think there's a template, so we can add that later. But this is exactly how it goes. So areas, the areas in your life that you want to continuously improve in. Who are you, right? What do you believe in, right? What drives you to work hard and succeed? What scary thing drives you to work hard and succeed? And let's keep going with this. So another thing would be the knowledge hub. So like, books, articles, podcasts, or how about this? We call it content we read/watch, right? So we would definitely store this inside knowledge hub. So let's do that like that. So knowledge hub. And there is a template for that, so that's good. And let's now think about this. Okay, perfect. So let's keep it simple for now. I'm only going to use a few examples to start us off with, right? So content we read and watch, books, articles, podcasts, etc. Anything that we decide, any research that we decide adds value to our lives. So these are all types of information that we want to store, and then these are the databases where we store them. And of course, then Knowledge Hub actually also has a relation to our success plan, right? So let's talk about that. So Knowledge Hub relates to success plan, so therefore success plan has a relation to Knowledge Hub. Okay. So this is kind of how things are linking up. And of course, areas of competence also links up to our success plan, because our areas and our values would then drive how we would go out and accomplish the things that we want to accomplish in our lives. So you can kind of already see that, things can get pretty complex, right? Especially when you're able to connect things in such a detailed way. So what's next? So the first thing we talked about was, types of information. We need to capture that. Actually, let's make these into toggles so we can just hide and show them as we need to. So let's put that like this. Let's add a divider. So divider. So types of information, we've done a bit of that. We're going to do more later, and we're going to then talk about the structured data to store. So the properties, the specific properties. So when we want to store a goal, what essentially we want to talk about is our, for example, let's open it up inside here. What needs to be stored, right? So let's make a template. What structured data, and then we have unstructured data. And again, you don't have to refer to this every single time, but like it's good to refer to it once in a while so you just remember, oh, these are the things that we want to store. These are the properties we want to store, right? So properties, page content. Okay, so let's open up a goal and let's just see an example. So for example, if I go inside our Keep It Simple dashboards, and I'm looking into one of our Make Life Simple, or actually probably want to go into our structure planning instead. And let's actually open up our success plan like this. Let's open up our goals. So for example, if you have a goal to, let's just say, be happy, right? Everybody has that goal, I'm sure. So we have a lot of stuff that we want to keep track of. So like status, type, impact, summary, due dates, tags, all this information is important to keep track of. And of course, there's a lot of other things that we can hide properties later. I'm just showing them all for now for our example, but let's start mapping that out, right? So let's have them side by side so I can tab really easily. So we have status, we have type, we have status type, we have due dates. We might even have a due dates, right? But I wouldn't recommend it. We would definitely have impact. We would definitely also have summary or description. So let's actually change this to description because I think description is more apt for this. Subtype doesn't make sense. Or we could have subtype here actually as well. So let's actually add subtype also. So subtype, and then we have tags, but essentially the idea here is that, in the status, we can say, well, we can essentially say, we can explain what status means to us. Again, this is where you can make your own definitions of what each property means. And this is how you can also be clear about what we mean in each property here. So we can say here is, we're saying the status is, what stage of progression is this item in currently, right? The type is what type of success, what type of win does, what type of success does this correlate to, right? Does this item correlate to? And in this case, it's only goal, right? So it's only goal. The due date is when do we want to work on it. Suggests a date range, right? When do we start? When do we end? Due date. Does this goal have a hard deadline that is enforced by others, right? Is anybody else forcing us to make sure that we have this complete? The impact, how impactful is this item to our overall success? Description, how can we explain this in 1 to 2 sentences, right? Subtype is this a specific item for work, school, etc. And then tags is what type of win does this item correlate with to? And this should be a huge win. Rocket. So we can already see, right? Like this is already giving you a lot of insights into how our system works, right? You can see that, okay, if I'm adding in a new goal, then I want to think about the status, the type, the due date, the impact, description, subtype, etc. So in terms of unstructured data, things that are inside the page content, then we might have, you know, reflections, right? Reflections on how we did over time when pursuing this goal. Another unstructured data might be, you know, and let's just open this up. We can even see for ourselves, like what else is in there. Oh, you know, notes, right? So notes that we took on. So how could we have worked on it better? You know, more details that are necessary. How can someone else do it again? How can I or someone else do it again? So this is really important. So again, I'm not going to do too many examples for this, but I just want to show you, like, this is essentially how you would think about it, where if I'm trying to save a goal inside my second brain, so again, let me also write like a journey, right? So maybe this would be helpful. If I am trying to save information about my so for example, if I'm trying to save information about my goals, then I open up the goals, I can see that I would save it inside the database. So it's called database. Our success plan, you know, and for me, goals are the big dreams that we have in life. You know, there is a template for this when I go and save it, so that's great. And then I can see, well, what stage of progression is this item in. These are the properties rather that I would need to store. So what stage of progression, what type, what due dates, etc., etc. And if I ever want to add unstructured data in a page content, this is what would live there. So that's a good example, right? Of, let's say, if I wanted to store a goal. But let's say we wanted to store something different, right? Let's say we wanted to store content we want to read or watch, because I think this is a good example as well. And let me also take this and make it into a template so it's easy to do. So we got new information, and we're going to remove all these things, make them into bullet points. Same here, make into bullet points. So if I just open up this content to read and watch, we can click new information, and then immediately it will populate. Remember, guys, drink water. Water break. Perfect. Okay, so content that we read or watch, right? So let's open up that part of our system. And again, that's the beauty of having a system already built, is that you already can start seeing, well, these are the places where I've anticipated to store information, and now we can go in and say that if it actually worked for us, is it meaningful, right? So for example, give and take. Okay, so summary is good, status, creator, link, score, type, category. Okay, so let's talk about it. So summary, status, we have creator, we have link, we have score, we have type, we have category, and then we have also oh, I guess what we can talk about then is also relations, right? Actually, no, the relations, I wonder, should the relations be here or elsewhere? No, relations should be in that step where we actually go do the relations. So we'll talk about that after. Okay, cool. So summary, and here's already what we can see is that there are some repetitive statuses. Like status is always going to be repetitive because status is pretty much everything that we do, right? The things that we work on have statuses to work on. The things that we digest have statuses on our digestion rate. And maybe we can discuss later about having a global block that would then change everything. But for now, we don't need that. So for example, summary is, you know, a 1 to 2 sentence a breakdown of the content, right? The status is what stage of progression is this item in, right? The creator is going to be the writer, speaker, etc. of this content. The link, where can we find this information online? The score, how well do we score this information in our database? The type, what type of content is it, right? And then the category, what industry, topic, etc. does this content fall under? And the unstructured data, and this is the fun part, unstructured data is going to be talking about, like, you know, our key takeaways. So we can actually even just copy this, right? Unstructured data is our key takeaways. So recollection, reiteration, and the last one is simplify. So these are our unstructured data. So what this means is that if I ever wanted to search on, let's say, you know, hey Conrad, what content have you digested recently, right? That was about mindsets and you scored over 5 stars. I can find that out really easily because I can just go to my database and be like, okay, I want to filter by, let's say, add a filter. I only want the types, or sorry, not types. I only want the category contains, let's say, mindset, and I want it to be like I read it recently, right? Is maybe within the last year. So it is within the past year. So that I can see immediately, these are all the books I've read about mindset within the past year. I can get even more fine-tuned. I can say, and it has to be a book. I don't care if it's anything. I don't want anything else. I only want books. And I filter by book and I can see books. So you can see this is so important, right? This is so meaningful, is that because we have structured data, we can then go and find anything that we need to find. Imagine all this information was inside the page itself. How would you find this information? You wouldn't be able to. And to prove my point, let's say that I knew that in one of these books, right, I had a recollection for, you know, that givers have the most to offer to this world. Sure, right? I search. Givers have the most to offer in this world. I'm never going to be able to find that information. That's unstructured data, right? So that's why the summary is so important. The summary is important because you are then able to search based on the summary. So let's say, right, the summary here instead, right, which is empty, wrong by the way, givers have so much to offer this world. How can we enable everybody to give? Right? So now when I search givers have so much to offer, I can immediately see that this book pops up. So that's why, if you ever wondered, why is there a need for a summary or description property? It's because you can have this kind of search and filter capability to find the information that you need. I hope this was helpful, this part, because this is the fundamental basis of why your database should have properties. Okay, so that's a good example. So if I'm trying to save information about my blank, which database should it go to? The following answers, this page answers the following questions, right? So if I'm trying to save information about blank, which database should it go to, right? About blank. And then the next thing we're answering in this section, right? You know, what structured data do I want to store about blank that I will most likely want to sort, filter, or search on, right? So that makes it really easy for you to find information that you need. Okay, cool. And let's now then talk about the database itself, right? And again, I will go back in and I'll do examples that you guys want to hear, especially the ones that you thought were confusing perhaps inside our system. Happy to talk about that here and make sure that we all know exactly which property does what. But let's just move on quickly to go over the third step here is how does this data connect to other pieces of data? How does it do relations? So let's start a new example for this because we have good examples with Knowledge Hub, but I also want to show you an example perhaps with Daily Quest. So let's say we want to store our reflections, okay? Our gratitude journal, okay? Gratitude journal. Maybe we also have mistakes that we have made, and let's say we also talk about like our habit tracking, okay? Daily habit tracking. There's three things that we're trying to store, and the beautiful thing about this is that we have one database that manages all three things. So we have daily quests. Actually, we don't have one database. Okay. Gratitude. Let's open it up actually just to show you guys, just so that I can give you a live example and you can see side by side how they work. So for example, we have this place called Daily Quests and Reflections, right? And then over here, just as an example, let's use one that's already filled out. We have this, where if we have a gratitude journal, we would be things I'm grateful for. So that would be the gratitude journal. So let's move over here. So things I am grateful for, right? So this is stored inside the gratitude journal, or the gratitude journal is stored inside the things I'm grateful for. Mistakes that I have made is stored inside our don't make the same mistake twice. Okay, don't make the same mistake twice. And this is stored under the here, and then daily habit tracking is stored under daily quests. Perfect. So this is where we start having a little bit of a option for us, because the daily quest, as you just saw here, actually has relations. You can tell relations by the arrow. It actually has relations over to these two databases, as an example, right? So what I would suggest here, and again, this could change, this could be better, but let's show how this works, is right now we can have this go this way, and then we can have daily quests as its parent, daily quests also as its parent. So basically, I would suggest that you actually store these things inside daily quests, through daily quests, instead of doing it by going directly into the gratitude journal. Just because if you tell the gratitude journal, let's say we go into the gratitude journal here, things I'm grateful for, you can see that it automatically relates to the day that you're grateful for that, and you have a little, wow, you've been grateful for this 3 times from this date to this date, right? So it's actually a lot more meaningful if you're going from the day back into the gratefulness journal. So let's say, for example, then we want to store that, right? So let's say new information, gratitude journal. What needs to be stored? Okay, so the structured data is actually nothing, right? We just a title, right? What you were grateful for. The unstructured data, you might add details about that gratitude specifically. so that you can be able to see how your definition of that gratitude, of the things that make you grateful, have changed over time. Because everything else is our calculations. So maybe we can even add something there too if you'd like. Okay, so let's add calculations. So let's add insights. So this is calculations, right? So these are the properties that automatically calculates. We have a text. Let's say tracks how many times, or we say number, tracks how many times you have been grateful for this item. And then the second thing is date range, right? And this tracks how long you have been grateful for this item. So your start and end dates. So you can see already then we're starting to have a lot of detail and understanding on how each item can be stored, and what insights might be calculated on top of that, and the unstructured data that you can store inside the page if you'd like to add more detail and depth to your information. Cool. So let's also add one more thing to notes, right? Notes. Recommend, maybe notes can just be quotes. Recommend adding this information through daily quest so that the gratitude is easily tagged onto the date that you felt grateful, right? So that could be also more details. So you saw that now that I have a bit of more improvements to the template, let's now add that to the template. So let's go here, let's say new information, let's edit this, and let's add this to the template inside calculations. Let's add a little dash, and then let's go here for a quote. So now when we want to add new things, we can easily have that. So for example, in the content read and watch, we can go back and we can copy this new information, and then we can paste it back in so that we have that data. Take this here, paste it into here, take this here, and then drag it into unstructured data. So simple as that. Perfect. And Anne has kindly reminded us for a water break. Everybody grab some water, take a sip. I actually need to refill my water bottle, so maybe you guys can watch me fill up my water bottle a little bit. But yeah, do you guys have any questions so far? Like, I think this is a pretty good way to think about your brain. Like, you don't really think about your brain in this way, and or at least normally, and it's important to, because then you're actually structuring exactly how your brain kind of behaves and works and understand. Alyssa says this is really hard. Why is it really hard? How can I help you? How's it really hard? While we wait for Alyssa to give us a response on that, let's do another example as well. No, Alyssa, let's talk about it. How are you having trouble? Let's let's talk about it, right? Where are you getting lost? Like, what you should be doing if you're following along is you should be figuring out what types of information you want to store right now. Like, what are the things always constantly on your mind, and how do you get it off of your mind? That should be your first step, okay? And you definitely should start off by saying like, hey, and I guess this is also useful for Sahil because Sahil just got in. No worries, Sahil. This is actually a very important and meaningful session, so I'm happy to explain myself again a little bit. But of course, if you have a chance to go back and watch. But basically, we're talking about how do we categorize all the things that your brain is thinking about and processing into their own respective buckets, and then learn how they connect with one another. So for example, when we think about what needs to be captured, we think about what type of information needs to be saved, right? Which database should it go into? Then what structured data should we store? How do we make it meaningful so that if we want to in the future sort, filter, or search on, how do we make it easy for us to expose that kind of information to process? And then how does the data connect to other pieces of data? So how do we have relations between each of the items? So that's exactly what we're talking about. And I had a lot of good tips that I was sharing about in terms of how do you build a notion, as well as how do you, essentially learn the basics of database architecture so that you have a chance to be able to go and build out your own system that of the information that you care about. So what I'm advising everybody is, well, what type of information do you most normally store? And then let's think about the database where that information should live. And then what properties should we expose out that are meaningful, that are deeply meaningful about each item? And then how do those pieces of information connect with one another to be more meaningfully processed and derived and make more sense, if that makes sense. Okay, I got it. Okay, so Alyssa, what you did is here. Okay, let me show you again how to do that relation. Okay, Alyssa, I know what happened. So what you want to do, just delete your relation property for now, and at least for the related databases, and let me start from scratch for you. So you press the plus button, right? You call it related databases, and I'm calling it demo because I can't have a duplication here. Property type relation, boom. Search your own database. So search the name of the databases of this database right here. So I'll wait for you. Let's make sure you get there. So you search databases, you click on it, and then instead of create a new property, you use the same property, okay? Because this is important. So this is the difference between parents and child versus sisters or brothers, whatever you want to use. But parents and child basically say like, okay, this is going to be the creator, or this is the parent, the higher hierarchy, and this is the lower hierarchy, this is the child. For example, this is the goal, this is the key results, okay? When you use the same property, that means that you are defining them to be on the same plane. They have the same hierarchy. Nothing is more important. So in this case, we have all these databases, which no one is more important. It just depends on which one you're linking into. And if you use the same property, right, if you click on that, then basically when you link something, let's say, for example, areas of competence, I want to link to success plan, it doesn't automatically add a relation from success plan over to areas of competence, which we want. This is meaningful. Why this is meaningful is because when you're going from, you might have a one-way relation within each of these databases. You might have two-way relations. So if you have two-way relations like we do here in success plan and areas of competence, then in the success plan as well, you would just select the areas of competence and then relate that manually together. So that is all you do. Hopefully that helped you and you didn't get too lost there. But the whole idea is that you're just determining, hey, if I am storing information into my areas of competence, where potentially does that information also link to as well in the case that I want to do roll-ups or calculations or things like that. So hopefully that helped. Okay, if you have any more questions on that, ask. Okay, don't hesitate to ask, because I want you guys to be following along all the way to the end, because when we get to the end, that's when the magic happens. So we talked about this. So this section basically, as we talked about earlier, it answers the following questions. If I'm trying to save information about blank, let's say I'm trying to save information about my gratitudes, which database should it go to? It goes to things I'm grateful for. What structured data do I want to store about my gratitudes that I will most likely want to filter or search on, right? So then I go, it's like for this one, it's just title, so I'm not really searching or filtering, but we have calculations. So automatically it would track how many times you've been grateful for this item. It will also track your date range. So I guess actually here would be day, which days you were grateful for this item. And then therefore we have calculations that are able to calculate based on those information. So definitely really happy that this helped. And we think that there's a way to then take this more meaningful, right? So we have this database then here that says, okay, so we have this gratitude, this things I'm grateful for database. What can we do with this database? How do we make it more meaningful in a sense that why do different databases talk with one another? Okay, so let's explain that for a second. And let me copy this down here. So let's take this over here. Let's paste that. And let's say, so this page answers the following question is, how do my databases connect, right? So how does my databases connect, or how do my databases connect? Similar to how my brain thinks about problems and make meaningful connections. Yes, and a lot of the work that does that, it's okay. As I explained before, right, the whole intention of this practice is to make sure that things are easily findable, right, and easily, okay, so the process to building a second brain, actually, let's talk about this. The process to build a second brain, the first one is knowing where to store information, right? Normally, if we think that, hey, I'll just remember it later, when something comes up and we want to store that information in memory, we usually forget. So the first thing is, how do we store it easily? So this is our first question. If I'm trying to save information about blank, which database does it store into? The second thing is, now that I've saved this information in some magical crevice of our brain, or in this case, in this magical crevice of Notion, how do we then search on it? How do we find that information, expose that information? How do we find it again when we need it? Great. Then the third thing we're talking about is, now that we have this information, it's easily findable, how do we then connect it to other pieces of information inside our world, inside our database, to then make it even more meaningful so that it's not only an information piece in isolation. So a good example of this is Knowledge Hub, okay? So Knowledge Hub actually relates to a lot of places. It relates to Success Plan, but it also relates over to our areas of competence. And let's explain what that means. So in our Knowledge Hub, right? And again, let's do a little, I think, to explain little notes at the top, and maybe we have, relations to keep in mind, connection, valuable connections, let's call it that. So pieces of content can relate to our success plan, usually projects, to help us determine what research went into our experimentation, what research went to the decisions we made on what we want to experiment with to accomplish a successful project. Right. Perfect. So then let's then move on to here, right? So these are the valuable connections. So the first one is success plan. And then the next one is the areas of competence, right? So let's just double check how this connects. And actually, we can also have links, okay? So let's talk about links. How do you find things? So let's link it over to our knowledge, our residence calendar, I believe. Let's load it up. I think it's right here. Perfect. So then you can see that it automatically links to it. So this actually is called Resonance Calendar. Okay, so this is where we can find the database, making it easy for you guys. And then where we can also find the relations is when we go into the database here, and then we open a page up, we can see that it links to projects and it links to sub area, right? Easy. So projects and then sub area. Content that helps us build better masters and trackers so that we are always up to date on the latest knowledge out there, right? So those are two valuable connections that helps us understand how the information that we're storing inside this resonance calendar can then get connected over to different parts of our life. So we can see the content that we read actually helps us create better projects, which makes us more successful. It also helps us in our sub areas, which then improves our life over time by maintaining and tracking all the best practices that we have to reach the success that we want. And of course, here is where we can also explain what this database does. So I'm just going to copy something here. Let's see, maybe this one is meaningful. And then we just paste it into here. Perfect. So this is kind of like a summary of like what this database does, right? And we can make this shorter. Okay, perfect. So this is like an explanation of what this is, a link to the database, the actual database, so we can find it, and then the valuable connections that we can actually build from here on out. So let's copy this as usual, and let's bring it over to our template so that we can create this also for another example. So let's do valuable connections, let's do a quote, and then let's do a bullet point. And actually, one more thing we're going to do here, we should rename this to be new database. And one thing that I think we can also do here is add a link to page. Okay, that doesn't save. It's all right. That's perfectly fine. So that's one example. Another example we could do is, for example, daily quest, right? And again, because we have our system to follow up on, we can go into our daily quest and we can say, okay, this is where we can find it. So perfect, like here, we paste this. Easily track your daily habits, track your meals, conduct a thorough reflection. This template automatically feeds into gamification, so you earn XP and gold for completing your day. Cool. So we already know that there's two valuable connections here. So what we call them? We called them, and let's actually open up this Thursday one as an example. So we called this one is don't make the same mistake twice. So I'm going to copy that. That's one of the properties that we care about, things that I'm grateful for right here. So this then I can talk about and say determine which days were did you make a mistake and how many times have you made this mistake before, right? So that's easy for you to track that. Things are grateful for. Again, which days have you been grateful for this item? And how many times have you been grateful for this before? So you can see that you're already seeing a trend. And I think that's the meaningful thing. That's the that's the important thing here, right? So that you can see the meaningful trend is like, okay, anything that relates to my daily quest in the future, and I'm not going to build this out, I'm just going to tell you the example is even for meaningful conversations, right? Then you can say, okay, so for meaningful conversations, again, it's going to be telling like which days did I have this meaningful conversation, and again, you know, how many times have we been able to have this meaningful conversation before? Actually, that one's a bit different. It's just which days have you made that meaningful meaningful conversation. So like it makes it really easy for you to see like, hey, how do all my databases connect with one another, right? It makes it really easy for you to have that system schema that says, okay, again, just going from, from the top, right? Okay, I have this gratitude journal, right? Which is things that I am grateful for in my life. And then I say that, okay, so if I'm grateful for something, these are things that I need to store, the title, the day, right? Or actually I can go through daily quests, right? So it's automatically tagged. So then I go into my daily quest and I see, okay, so I can easily track, these are the things I can track here, right? I can do daily habit tracking. I can also track things I'm grateful for. I can also make sure I don't make the same mistake twice. And these actually connect to a specific database, which stores all this information in one place. So hopefully that is helpful for you to think about. And this is where we should take a quick water break, thanks to Anne, but also talk about what are your examples? What are things that you want to store that you haven't been able to think about where you can store them, right? Or maybe you don't know how a specific database works inside our system. This is the time to ask that, so I can show you exactly how they connect, the properties you should worry about, all that jazz, so that we can work through this problem together. And listen, I think it's fine. I think it's great that you actually built with us, because it makes it so that you also start thinking about how to orientate this. I think it's extremely important for you to also know, like, hey, these are all the databases that I have, and these are the ways that they talk to each other, etc., etc., so that it's actually a lot more useful for you too, so that you understand the fundamentals of how the system works, right? I think it's actually something more meaningful for you to build yourself, and I'm glad that you went on this journey with us. So definitely really appreciative and really happy about that. So while I wait for a few more questions to come in, I'm going to also map out the rest of the databases that I know that I have, right? So for example, we have Inbox. Inbox is a database that we have. We also have a few things like gamification tags. We also have leaderboard, item shop. We also have party members. We have badges. We have loot boxes. And actually, what's meaningful here is we can even add the template series, right? And this makes it easy for us to select. Let's actually make this a multi-select. So for example, these are all gamification stuff. So the gamification project. And let's make that yellow.
Incoming broadcast. It says, welcome home.
My Google Home triggered. Nice. And then let's take this all and drag it into here. And then we can have our, so these are our gamification stuff. We can also add stuff like, for example, so in this mind map, we already have like, different databases that are identified by these little pancakes. I don't know, I'm trying to think of a good way to explain them, but pancakes, right? So you can kind of see like how they work. So we also have like weekday calendar, we have weekend calendar. We also have stuff like, music anthems. So like you can see, like we have a lot of databases, meaningful conversations, gifts tracker, and then we have reciprocity ring, how can I be helpful, and then giving sessions, and then we have recipes, groceries, and then we have this meals this week. Okay, so let's now talk about another example then, because I think this is also very interesting that helps you map out something even a bit like non-essential, but like something also still very cool. So let's say that we are trying to save information on like recipes, and we're trying to save information on like what meals to eat this week. Okay. So inside recipes, we can save it inside the recipes right here. And then what meals to eat this week, we can save that in meals this week, right? Obviously, that's not very meaningful. So let's talk about what that exactly means, right? And obviously, we can also add, okay, let's just do recipes first. So if we open up recipes, let's open up new information, right? We want to store recipes. And let's go into our areas of competence and let's open up our recipe box. And again, once this is all built, you can easily go and find your recipes, your meal planner, anything that you need very easily. And I'll show you how to do that. Excuse me. But let's, for example, say that, and again, I can just link this now too. So let's link this over to recipes. I'm going to click it, new database. And this is the Be Intentional series. So Be Intentional. And we're going to now add some information here that links to page. So this is the meal planner, right? So very easy. You can see that if you want to access it, it's right there. But let's go back to recipes, right? Because we want to talk about what exactly we're going to store here. So we're going to add and remove recipes, and we can go in and say, well, actually we have plenty of different properties that need to be stored, right? So we have tags, right? So let's again open it up. So sorry guys, I keep tabbing around because I just need to refer to it. But we have tags, right? And then we have link. And then we have prep time and we have cook time. And then this is where we calculate total time. It's automatic calculation. And then ingredients can be also worked out here. So we want to talk about ingredients, recipe ingredients. And then I believe this links to shopping list. So we're going to talk about groceries, but actually it's called a shopping list. Okay, perfect. So let's go into here and let's say for recipes. So we're doing tags. What type of food is it? Right? Link. Is there an online recipe? How long does this item take to prepare? How long does this item take to cook? Right? And then in our insights, our calculations, our total time is automatically calculated based on the prep time and the cook time. So shows you how much total time in hours and minutes it will take for you to complete this item from scratch, right? So that's also very meaningful, and you can see that these are all properties, right? And then unstructured data, you can see inside here is where we talk about directions, right? Directions or instructions rather, and more detailed links, right? So that's where you find that information. And I think the last thing is the thing here would be like add the recipes that you want to cook inside this database and use the relations to shopping list to add ingredients for each item. Okay, I'm gonna do a check, and then the description would be the the meals that you are inspired by and want to cook. Okay. And then if you go into the recipes, the interesting thing here would be then we have related databases, right? Well, the related database is shopping list and meals this week. And then we can say here is that, well, we have valuable connections. And again, if we open up the meal tracker recipes box, we can see that there is a when and ingredients. So when and ingredients. Which day of the week do we want to eat this meal? And the ingredients would be what ingredients would we need to buy to make this meal possible, or need to have. You might not need to buy it. Maybe you grow your own plants. But yeah, so basically, I also like being able to access this or share this database with my friends and family, so we can have like a shared recipe box. So I say recipes are one of the most intimate things family pass down to one another. Enjoying your mother's special broth after you move to your home is a very comforting experience, and you may want to immortalize their recipes. So this template allows families to share one recipe source with multiple independent locations, and grocery lists are independent as well. So it makes it really easy for you to share and sort. And again, properties are really meaningful and exciting for you to be able to filter out different types of content. And in this case, we have, when, so maybe one family's, you yourself, maybe you moved out, you are eating this at your house, but also you can find out what the main family's eating at their house too, and you can kind of compare and contrast, like, oh, you've been eating the same stuff we're eating, we can talk about the recipes. It's a really fun experience. So that's something that I like to do and I like to talk about as well, because I think it's very meaningful. So yeah, you can see that we're starting to build like the structure here, and I'll definitely build this out more and more. I think this is something that I can definitely build out for our entire super package. So don't worry about that. You can see, you'll see it when it's done. But I think the important thing is I really want to make more examples for you guys that has information that you want to store and you don't know where to store them or how to store them, so that we can work on that together, so that I can show you exactly how that can be done. So I see that Alyssa has notes that are okay. So Alyssa has two questions. Where would my scholarship applications go? And that would be separate from the system that we have. And you also have notes from past classes separate from the databases. Okay, so that's actually quite interesting. So this is from a student's perspective, right? So this Alyssa's a student, nursing student. So she's asking a very direct question. If she has a information that has a scholarship application, where would that information go? Well, that's great, actually. Let me explain how that's work. And again, this is to build a system that you care about, right? And this is a very easy way to start seeing like where's the gaps in your where are you still storing information in your brain because you don't have a system for it yet, and therefore you should build a system for it, right? So that's very important. So let's talk about that. For example, you want to store scholarship applications, right? Just as an example, and I'm probably going to delete this after because I don't have a system for this, but just to show you, like, you can at least map out like, do I have a system for this yet? And you say no, right? So for example, I can even do that. All right, system implemented, and then we can say yes or no. All right, we can have a checkbox here. We can say system implemented. So obviously all these things that we did before are yes, but this thing is no, right? And that's fine. Maybe at some point we can build it, right? What scholarships have we applied to, and what were their responses, right? So that as an example. And maybe we have a new database that says scholarships. Okay. And if we have this database for scholarships, basically what we can do, again, new database, right? I think this is a master and tracker. I think this is definitely a master and tracker. Okay. So a master tracker to help you keep track, a master and tracker to store all the best practices of getting a scholarship, as well as seeing the responses from different funding sources. Okay, so then maybe a valuable connection could be school, right? Maybe you have a database for schools and you can talk about that like that. But the important thing here is that if you have a scholarship applications, well, what might you want to store? This is again really easy for you to start thinking about. Well, it's like, okay, so for example, the structured data that we might want to store is the school that we're applying under, you know, the scholarship limits, right? The deadlines, right, for submitting the scholarship, right? And then we might also have, you know, amount. So this is scholarship amount. And then we might also have information that deals with, I don't know, maybe Alyssa, you can tell me, like, how do you normally store your scholarships? Like, what else do you want to add on there? Like, what other structured data do you need, right? And then in the unstructured data, we can talk about applications, right? These are applications that you've written, right? Applications, you know, application write-up. You can store it in there so that you know, like, hey, you know, I applied to this scholarship and this information was, and this was the application I used to store there. And hi, Aisha, nice to see you. So application was stored there. This is the one I used to send to them. These are the key things that they care about, you know. What does this scholarship, who is this scholarship looking to target, and etc., etc. So you can kind of see, Alyssa, specifically, that this is already very much targeting for your scholarship, for the things that you need to store and things that you want to get off your mind. Perfect. Stages is great, right? Stages, you know, requirements. Okay, so maybe like extracurriculars and stuff like that. So can you tell, like, this is already starting to be helpful? Like, this is how you can start planning out the database that you can build, and you can make your own master basically inside your system. And that is the idea here, right? This is the idea, is that now that you know how the system works, the architecture of building a system, how can you then go and fundamentally say, like, okay, I am trying to save certain information because it's stuck in my brain and I need it on digital. What database does it live into, right? And then you go. We figured out that this lives in a scholarship database, probably under your master and trackers. Great. Then what information do I need to store? Well, what school, you know, what scholarship amount, what deadlines are out there, you know, what stages, what requirements, etc., etc. So we make it really dead simple for you to go in and store the information that you need, so that you can easily go about your information gathering as well as information processing, and then eventually, or information gathering and then information recollection and information processing. Where would lecture notes go in, right? Should it live inside the residence calendar, or it should be its own database? So that's actually quite meaningful as well, right? So let's say we wanted to store lecture notes, right? Lecture notes. And again, this is a process that anybody can do, so I want to make sure that it's not rocket science here, okay? So lecture notes, you know, information that I have learned by attending a lecture, right? For example, I would say a lecture note can go into one of two places, okay? I generally like to store information into okay, so you can put it into content we read or watch, like, but that's more for like structured content, more for like, hey, you know, this is a one-time thing, this is a podcast, this is an article, this is a book. Whereas a lecture notes is part of a series, right? You're going to be learning a lot of stuff from this one class. So actually, I would say that this goes under a project. This will go under your success plan. So success plan here. Let's see. Success plan. And then I would say that this would go under your this would probably be a task, you think? There's a few ways you can do this actually. Like it really depends on the way that you think. So let me give you a few options, okay? The first one is you can store it as a task. You can be like, okay, one of my tasks was to go to this lecture and take notes. And therefore, this is where I can save all my different lecture notes. And then if I ever want to go back, this is what I did. So for example, let me just show you, right? If we went into our super package and then we went into our, let's say our keep it simple dashboards, because we like that dashboard a lot. We're gonna make life simple. We can then go and see like, hey, we actually have a let's go to planner day. So we have some active projects that we're working on, right? One of them might be a course. Maybe it's architecture 1003. Okay, cool. So what we have is we actually have these tasks under them, right? They could be essays, research essays, reflections, etc. You can actually add a new task for attending like lecture 1, lecture 2, lecture 3, or make lecture 1 notes, make lecture 2 notes, make lecture 3 notes, and then have that in the body of that item. Or what you could do is add them here and say, okay, this was, toggle lecture 1, maps of meaning, blah, blah, blah. And then you can open it up and you can put all your lecture notes. 1, I learned this thing. So you can do it either or. I think they're both very meaningful, and I think they both have an option for you to be able to go deep into the information. I personally would suggest putting it as a task, just because every time you finish then a item in the success plan, you also get rewarded for it, right? If you add in lecture notes like this, you don't get rewarded, and you can't track the status of your notes, like whether you've done the perfect summarization or anything like that. So I think that's also a bit important. Alyssa says, for my old notes, I will keep them where they are. I don't want to add different goals from the past. At least I know where they are. And that's totally fine. I mean, you can definitely just stick them inside your residence calendar then if they're old notes, because again, they're good information to have. Or you can stick them inside your masters, because again, masters, like the best way that I like to think about masters is, in the past, I would have tons and tons of notebooks from my days in school. I stored them into a cabinet and I never looked at them again. But I always thought to myself, it's like, well, those actually are supposed to be the lifelong learnings I've earned, right? Obviously, if I've taken a math course, if I've taken a science course, I want to remember those things. So someday I'll go into those books and take them out. Those are my masters. So those masters are going to be the place where we store, like, hey, this is everything that we learned relating to this specific topic, and these are all the notes that we've ever stored for them. That's where I would store that. That's where I would use that. Does that help, Alyssa? Using it as masters instead of putting in residence, because residence is more like other people's work, and then masters is more like your own work. This is my own way to think about this concept. This is the notes that I've taken for that, and of course you can have research coming in from everywhere else too. Yeah. And I think, yeah, for note taking in general, using bidirectional dynamic linking apps like Remnote are actually very useful as well as also. Yeah, Aisha, I think definitely using like a subtype for lecture notes is also very helpful here too. Yeah, so hopefully that was helpful. I think this was a very meaningful exercise and definitely something that even our system needs. So I'm planning to work on this to finish it up and, to build out everything. Like, hey, this is all the information that you could possibly store inside our databases. How does it work? How do they connect? How do they relate? And most importantly, how can we make it so that we can easily think about things, recollect information that we've stored before, and then process it in a meaningful way by making them related to one another. So guys, I think that's the end of today's live stream. Really happy that I was able to talk about this topic with you guys because it was something that was very meaningful to me. I think that many people have been asking, it's like, hey Conrad, the system is actually very complex, very comprehensive, you can store so much information, but it's so complex in the fact that even when we store information, we don't know where to look to find the information that we stored. So this is my way of making like a database that makes it very easy for you to say, okay, if I'm trying to store ABC information, this is where it goes. And this is the type of information that I need to store alongside with it to make it meaningful in the system to work and be able to search, sort, filter anything that I need to be able to find that information again in the future. And then after you're done doing this, then you're able to say, hey, how does this information then relate to my other parts of my life? If I'm doing research on information, how am I then able to relate this research over to all the different parts of, my success plan or my areas of competence, or if I'm doing something about my daily quest, if I'm storing my daily journaling, how can I make that related over to my, gratitude journal, or not to make the same mistake twice if I've done anything wrong during that day, which you probably have. So essentially, this is the process. This is how you think about systems. System architecture is never easy, but it's a very important skill to learn, especially when you're starting to think about and map out how your brain works and how you want your digital brain to work as well. So thank you for watching, guys. I really appreciate you guys joining me on this live stream. Hopefully it was helpful for you, and definitely look forward to the system as it comes out so that the schema is there for you to copy and for you to build upon as you need it. So perfect. Thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day. If it's your nighttime, have a great weekend ahead. If it's your daytime like me over in Asia, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend and enjoy yourself.